This is Canada Reads American Style, featuring two friends who love Canada Reads and Canadian literature. Welcome our host Rebecca from Michigan and Tara from Ontario.
Hi everyone, it is Rebecca and Tara, and I am really excited about our guest for Reader Repartee today because it is my good friend and former colleague Geoff from California. But I have to say, this proves that it isn't just Tara that has friends and family that are willing to be on Reader Repartee, but I bagged one for myself. So anyway, Geoff, welcome. I am especially, but we are so thrilled to have you on today.
Well, hello, and I'm thrilled to be here too, and it's great to hear your voice.
So, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, no, I'd love to. So I am in the great state of California, even though there's trees all over the streets because it's been raining with 50-mile-an-hour winds for the last 2 weeks. But I have been adult services librarian at the Sacramento Public Library for 23 years, and as much as I love it, I'm also looking forward to much time off when I retire in 3 years, and then I can actually do some real reading. What else? So, love living in California. I'm planning to stay here when I retire as well.
I just have to say, I'm really disappointed that you're not moving to Chicago because I was really hoping you're going to make that change and move to Chicago.
Well, I'll tell you what, I will flip a coin in 3 years. No, I love Chicago. Absolutely is my favorite city in the entire world. It is a little colder than I like,
Yeah.
and strangely, my healthcare when I retire probably will not afford me much outside of California. But you never know. If a dream job comes along, I would love to move to Sarah Paretsky's hometown.
There you go. Yay. Oh, thank you for giving her the shout out. I appreciate
Absolutely.
that.
All right, sure.
Okay, Geoff, before we get started, I also want to welcome you because I think you are our first American reader
Wow.
as Reader
Okay.
Repartee. Yeah, so that's pretty exciting. Okay, question number 1. How did you become a reader?
Well, this was a really fun one to write and take notes on because I have to credit the first librarian in my life, Miss Caravella, was at my grade school, Roosevelt grade school in Wauwatosa, Wisconsin. She was awesome. I remember her even in kindergarten for her story times, just instilling this awesome love of books. And what also helped, well, several things, but on top of her being such an inspiration, I had a lot of friends who were readers, and we read together, which was fabulous. Growing up, I come from older parents. My mom was in her late 30s when I was born, and my dad's 15 years older than hers. So my brother and sister, which are separated by 10 years from me, were not really around, and they both worked full time. So, as you know, in the Midwest, when we got weather of all types, blizzards, and I would have to be home for weeks on end because it was just impossible to be outside playing. I just dove into books, and we read in reading circles as kids, grade school. So that really fostered it. And then I have to say, series books for me as a kid, especially with my group of friends, starting out with the usual Nancy Drew series, the Hardy Boy series, and you'll get a kick out of this because I had a really vivid imagination. Reading, I put myself in the story and would write little addendums at the end of the chapters, and I would pretend I was their kid detective cousin from Canada visiting for the summer.
I love that.
So yeah, and so those series, and then of course the mystery ones, Encyclopedia Brown. Now I'll tell you, I was heartbroken as a librarian. I didn't know this until years later that Carolyn Keene and Franklin Dixon aren't actual people. That those series, that those were pseudonyms of like stables of writers that would crank out the series by formula, because I thought that they were just such amazing people that they could write that much. But so those series, really kept my interest. I did go back as an adult and reread some of them, and then also watched the TV show
Hmm.
with Sean Cassidy and Pamela Sue Martin. And it just has to be a sophistication, because I remember thinking those were absolutely the best books in the world when I was a kid. And I rereading them as an adult with a little more sophisticated taste. Wow, they did not hold up at all. But you couldn't have told me that as a kid.
I know I did the same thing. I went back and reread some of the Nancy Drews, and I was the same way. And I was just like, wow, okay. But hey, as a kid, we loved them. So
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not going to go back and read them now. I'm just going to leave them.
Yeah, so I will say that kind of inspiration, friends who read, and then timing, because Valentine's Day I will be 52, and I did not grow. I mean, I was the first kid on my block to have cable, but I feel like I would have gotten sucked into, if it was today, video games, and there's what 3-4 million stations on cable, all the housewives garbage that's out there. The timing when there wasn't all of those distractions, I was able to, reading was it. So the timing was part of it too.
That's a really good point, because I do think it is easy to just find other things to do other than read. And so I love that you had that relationship with a librarian at such a young age. So I love that. That's awesome. So the next question is, what book do you wish you could read again for the first time and have that feeling of having read it again?
Yeah, that one is an easy one, because it just popped into my head right away. And again, my love with mysteries, Agatha Christie, as far as I'm concerned, can do no wrong. Her first book is The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. And I remember, Rebecca, we read, it was one of my picks when you and I were in that book group together.
That's right. I forgot
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yes. So I'm going to, spoiler alert, I'm just going to tell you.
Don't spoil too much.
Oh, well.
No.
Tara, have you read that one yet?
I haven't. I'm going to read it next. No, go ahead, Geoff. It's okay.
Okay.
Be careful. Yeah. We don't want to ruin that. Yeah. But go ahead.
Okay. Well, I'll just say then that her use of the first person narrative was groundbreaking at the time. And for those who don't know anything about, well, most people know Agatha Christie is a whodunit. Yeah. And I'll just say that the use of the narrator towards the end, the last 10 pages, my jaw was on the ground. And I felt almost a little betrayed by her, or tricked by the unethical use of the first person narrative in the book. But
because that is next on my, Geoff, I'm doing like an Agatha Christie challenge for myself. Like I just want to go through over in the next several years. And that's actually the next book on my list of hers to read. So you've got me like super excited to read it.
Yeah, no, you will. And again, the ending, so I was home with Mono, and I read all of Agatha Christie's in a row, probably like 70 of them, because I was home for a month. And of course I was the first one. And to this day, I just remember like the world stopped at the end, because it was that shocking. And I was like 16, but still, to this day, rereading it, it's one of those books that I'll go back and reread maybe every couple of years. But to be able to do it again without knowing how it ends, and to have that kind of just suspense and that kind of that first feeling, I'd love to be able to experience it again.
That's a cool answer. Yeah, I forgot we read that. Yeah.
Oh, and I wanted to just bring this up too, and we have plenty of time, I assume, because of that, the trick and how it was used. It inspired me to also write. And just a funny story about that. After I read that, I actually wrote an episode of Murder, She Wrote, because it's very similar, and with Angela Lansbury. I'm sure it's in Canada too. I hope. Yeah. And I submitted it, and I thought, they're gonna jump at this, and I'm gonna be famous, and no, but they did not break my heart. They didn't take it, obviously, but they were very diplomatic, because the letter that I got back from them was, "We have stables of writers that are paid, and and they are working 2 years in advance filming." But they said it was not, didn't have anything to do with the writing or the plot or anything like that, and they thanked me. So I thought that it wasn't. I was kind of flattered.
So you were 16 when you sent that in or whatever? Is that about how old you were when you submitted it then?
I was a
That is
sophomore
so
in high school.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
and
love
I thought
that.
that would be funny if they used it as like a springboard to say, "And next on Murder, She Wrote, written by 16-year-old."
Well, thank you. That was a great answer.
Yeah,
Sure.
that was a good one. Okay, question 3. Which author, living or dead, would you like to meet in person, and why?
Okay, so Rebecca's going to get a kick out of this one too, because this will go back to our book group. But I'm going to say Joe Eszterhas.
Oh my God, Geoff, are you serious? Oh my God.
Yes.
Okay,
Okay,
go
and I
ahead.
will explain why. Okay.
Oh God.
Now, he has published several books, but primarily, if you're not familiar with him, he's one of the highest paid and most controversial screenplay writers, movie writers in Hollywood. And I had picked a book for our book group called American Rhapsody, that he wrote. And just to give you a taste of the kind of controversy he is, he's the author of Showgirls, Basic
Oh,
Instinct, Jagged Edge, and then some real bomb. Well, like Showgirls, and then like
yeah.
some other really like sexual thrillers like Jade. And he also wrote one of my favorite movies, Music Box, with Jessica Lange, and Flashdance was one of his first
Oh,
scripts. But he
I love
was one
Flashdance.
who would get like $3 million for 3 pages of a write-up before he wrote the script. So he was really kind of a rock star. He's a Hungarian-born man who, as a child, lived in a refugee camp outside of Allied occupied Austria. And he just had a fascinating life, on top of being a really usually brilliant writer. He had found out that his father had committed war crimes, and disowned him. And he had written a whole book about that. And the title on that one escapes me, but I had gone back and read all of his screenplays. They're all either online, or you can get them through ILL or Link Plus. They're actually published out there. And I think what fascinates me the most about him, and what I would like to ask him if I was able to have a conversation, is, what is your process? Because I've always thought, we all have a book in us, but do you storyboard? Do you just sit down and type nonstop for 3 hours and then just cherry pick the good part?
Mhm.
Those kinds of things really fascinate me. And the fact that he's so prolific, his screenplays are so tight, and so much goes on. Like, how like in short stories, like every sentence counts.
Mhm.
Everything, every direction in his screenplays are purposeful. They mean something. I just find it really fascinating. It's funny too, because his stuff tends to be so misogynistic, even though in his personal life he's such a huge supporter of women's rights. And he's just such a contradiction of a human being. So it would be good old Joe.
Wow. I didn't know that about his father and everything, so that's actually interesting. I'll have to look up more about him. I just thought of the stuff that he wrote in that book we read, but anyway.
Yeah, it was pretty. It was, yeah. I mean, let's just say his mind does travel south.
Yeah, it does. Okay. Our next question is, what fictional character would you like to meet and why?
Okay, so this one also is kind of a no-brainer for me. At 19, the one coming of age book, it's an ensemble book, but for me, it really is a coming of age story. The Last Picture Show. One of the main characters' name is Sonny Crawford. And I identified with the character so much growing up. And it really, kind of, a lot of people say Catcher in the Rye got them through college. Last Picture Show got me through college. And it went
Mm.
It has a lot of facets in it that at the time I identified so much with Sunny, having like huge crushes or even just emotional love affairs with primarily older people. I always felt like an old soul. So my people were 10, 15 years older than me when I would fall in love, and then having big city dreams, but then a lot of nostalgia for like the quiet. This took place in Wichita Falls, Texas, so it was very much a southern storyline, and I grew up in the Midwest, so like that really wasn't the same. But I just felt like out of my group, I was always the level-headed fixer, just like he was throughout the book. If you're not familiar with it, it's a fairly quick read. I'd almost call it a novella, made into a very famous movie as well. But that definitely, and I always joked too. I mean, I'm way too old now, but I always said, if they redo it, you better have me as Sonny Crawford, even though I can't act.
Well, that was a great answer. That really was. Thanks. And I kind of knew your background with that. Yeah.
Yeah, and also a shout out, just literary wise. It was written by Larry McMurtry. Rest in peace. I think he passed away not too long ago. And Last Picture Show has several sequels to it. So if you're looking for some really good writing or sequels on it, definitely recommend.
Okay, Geoff, we always like to ask our guests, what are you currently reading?
Right now, I will have to say it's a little trashy.
Oh, that's okay.
I do like, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember we had Rebecca and I worked with a lovely librarian named Stephanie, and she very highbrow reader. Very, it's all Jane Austen, it's all whatever. And I remember she and I are very good friends, but I remember I was a little offended years ago. We were talking about what are you reading now, and I think I was reading. It might have even been like a graphic novel or something before they became huge. And she looked at me and she goes, "Well, at least you're reading." And I thought, I'm like, okay. But anyway, so no, I love good Hollywood dish. So I just finished Matthew Perry.
Oh, yeah.
Really, really good. It, a bit of a downer. I mean, if 90% of it focuses on, and I was not a big, huge Friends fan, so I wasn't expecting it to be a love letter to all of his co-stars, but it was 90% of his addiction problems, and it was a very satisfying read. And yeah, so I recommend that one. And also right now, actually, this one I'm listening to. It's Valerie Bertinelli's. It's called title is Enough Already, and it's a memoir. It's not like a full autobiography, but she was definitely One Day at a Time was huge for me when I was growing up, and the fact that I loved Van Halen, and that whole connection, and it's a fun read. It's a tight read. I'm probably 10,000 on the list, but I will read Spare.
I was going to ask you if you were going to read that. Yeah.
I am. And the thing is, I'm not a huge Anglophile, and I'm definitely not like a royal watcher, but I just find it's one of those books where I want to get to the bottom of like I don't know who to trust out of any of them. And so I want to see how much I believe out of it.
Yeah.
We'll see. I know nothing about Meghan Markle. I don't. I find it, a little sad that out of the, wealth and privilege that the, Windsors have just, throughout history, that you have two brothers that can't get along. I don't know. It'll be interesting.
Well, Geoff, is there anything else you would like to add about reading or books or being a librarian or anything?
Well, I will say this. I kind of got roped into doing a story time. I lost a friendship over it. We got into it. But I will say that the story time, because I was a grade school teacher before I was a librarian, and the traditional story times that I grew up with, it has changed so much. And when I did a lot of going around to different branches to view what is expected of story time now, it was really, it was an experience. And I, of course, do a lot of comic book stuff just for fun. So I did a superhero story time, and I did by their rules. I did a lot of repetition, a lot of finger play, a lot of songs, a lot of short books, so that I could do 3 at once, just to keep, a lot of physical activity to keep them moving and focused, which was so different from what I remember doing 30 years ago when I was teaching. So, but I will say that with all, like we were talking about video games and all that, and all the distractions that are there, get kids reading as young as possible so that when the distractions come, they know how, they'll still love it.
Yeah.
Just throwing that library connection in there again. Get them when they're young.
Geoff, we want to thank you so much for being a guest on our podcast. We really do appreciate it. It was great to chat with you, and just continued best wishes. And then when you retire, come and visit me, okay?
Absolutely. Oh, it'll be before retirement. I will see you before that, I promise.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Geoff.
Thank you for having me. This has been just true joy.
Thank you for joining us on our bookish journey. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing, rating, and reviewing Canada Reads American Style wherever you listen. You can connect with the podcast and Rebecca on Instagram at Canada Reads American Style, and with Tara at On a Branch Reads. Until next time, keep reading.